The Inheritance. Christ, Beck snapped, giving a start. Before her stood a tall man in a butler's suit. His lips curled, and he lifted a sardonic brow as he gave a small, mocking bow. Her eyes moved from his oddly fat feet up his short, sturdy legs, where the tail of his coat hung below his knees, and moved back and forth in the slight breeze. His hips were narrow, but his long body widened into a thick paunch. Then his chinless head squatted on shoulders, no wider than his girth. His long, thin nose occupied his face. "You frightened the bejesus out of me. Who the hell are you?" she asked. "Who is this? And why is he inside my aunt's house? And why is he dressed in a black suit straight from the early 20th century?" His smile widened into a toothy grin. "Falstaff, the butler, at your service, ma'am." His hooded eyes blinked slowly, and he bowed again. The man was repulsive to look at, but Beck was drawn into the dark depths of his strange eyes. With an effort, she broke their gaze. Auntie had a butler? She never said. Over the years, Beck had kept in contact via letters. Aunt Bess didn't own a computer, and now Auntie was gone, presumed dead. That's what the police said. It was obvious to Beck that they had given up hope of finding her great-aunt. Falstaff cleared his throat to reclaim her wandering attention. The left side of his upper lip curled in a smile. Or was that a snarl? "I think, if you check, you will find mention of me in Bess's will. She and I became very close. She was alone." He paused. "And lonely. What the hell is this guy insinuating? Auntie allowed you to call her Bess?" She swallowed hard. "Surely not. As I said, she was lonely. She felt deserted. She loved me." His lips opened over his large teeth in an approximation of a cheeky grin. "Like a son. She wanted to change her will, but before she could, she disappeared." "It's not true," Beck gasped. "She would never. She loved me. I loved her. I'm her niece, grand niece, whatever, who never visited her. I was overseas. If it's any business of yours." Why was she defending herself against the hired help? What he was saying was preposterous. Beck gritted her teeth. "I'm her niece. I'm blood." "Yes, blood." Falstaff blinked slowly. Was he goading her? Blood. So much thicker than water. He licked his lips. "As you say, whatever. The will was not changed, and I remain Falstaff the butler, at your service, ma'am." He clicked his heels and gave another little bow, stepped back, and gestured for her to enter. She ignored him. She didn't need his invitation. "I was hoping to revisit the old place alone, so you can go back to wherever butlers go, and I'll look after myself." A wry smile tugged at her mouth. "I sound just like Great Aunt Bess at her autocratic best. An apology automatically rose to her lips. To hell with that. Just who does this guy think he is? Freaking creep. Why am I so jittery? Her tongue flicked out over her red lips, but she kept her gaze steady. The house is mine. Falstaff's smile disappeared. His nostrils flared, and his coal-black, unblinking eyes stared down his long nose. Beck lifted her chin and stared back. Prick. With head and bunk stiff, he turned on his heel into the gloomy interior. "What's with the fancy dress costume?" she demanded. He turned around, the movement a slither of insolence. "Oh, just something our Aunt Bess liked to do for guests," he replied. How dare he? Our Aunt Bess, indeed. She liked to relive history. It gave our visitors a bit of a thrill. Tourists are stupid. There it was again, that infuriating superiority and mockery. We could, and did, frighten the fools with tall tales of hauntings and death. Aunt Bess and I enjoyed the game. Solid, sensible Aunt Bess playing dress-up? Surely not. I want to be alone. Falstaff bowed smartly as he replied, "Perhaps Madam would like me to bring her bags in. Shall I put them in the master bedroom?" "Sure. Why not?" She tossed him the car keys, which he snapped up with his left hand in a strangely smooth and agile movement for someone who looked so awkward in his own skin. He moved forward. She backpedaled as he passed, surprised and confused by a fleeting apprehension. Shaking herself, she stepped onto the black and white marble tiles of the foyer. Automatically, her hand reached to the right and flicked the switch. The brassy brightness of electric light pushed the shadows back. The old Dutch lamp still hung above the entrance, but an ugly black cord snaked through the decorative fretwork and into the base where it connected to a bulb, instead of the genteel neglect of her memory. The harsh electricity showed dilapidated antique furniture and fading decor. She threw her red bag onto the armchair, making a bloody splash against the faded green velvet. She kicked off her red stilettos, making a matching puddle on the floor. She noticed a dimmer switch and twisted the knob. "That's better." A smile curved Beck's mouth as she gazed around. Her mother had brought 8-year-old Becky here to live, just for a few weeks, until after the divorce. Becky ended up staying for 36 months, during which, under the generous care of her forthright great-aunt, she blossomed. Aunt Bess taught her that you could love without anger, manipulation, and shouting. Beck bit her lip to prevent the tears. Be sensible. Auntie was very old. She had a good innings. Beck heard the old lady's rusty voice. "Buck up, girlie. That's life. Look to the future." "Yuch." Beck wrinkled her nose. What was that disagreeable, swampy smell? She spun slowly around. A veil of dust made everything appear out of focus. Hang on. I thought that guy said he was the butler. Why is everything so dusty? Moving further down the hall, she said aloud, "Lazy bastard. He is so gone when I get settled." Thud, thump, thud, thump, thud, thump. Beck froze, heart pulsing painfully in her throat. She turned and saw the butler's legs disappear around the curve of the stairwell. Had he heard her? Too bad. Perhaps it will improve his attitude. His tread thudded resentfully into the dusty carpet as the back corner of the valise thumped the stair. Thud, thump. Beck laughed and returned to exploring her surroundings. Bet the bossy old broad's turning in her grave, she murmured, running a well-manicured finger tipped in blood over the arm of the settee. A photograph of the fabulous old Tartar, looking her imperious best, glared down at Beck from high on the wall. She always appeared fearsome until you got to know her, Beck thought with affection. She squinted at the picture in the golden gloom. Good grief, it could be me, she thought. The Aunt Bess in the picture was younger than when Beck knew her. Straight-backed, strong and indomitable in her khaki riding habit. She held a rifle over her left shoulder and rested one leather-booted foot on the head of a dead lion. I was so happy here, Beck said, addressing the portrait. I did love you, you know. I'm so sorry if you felt I neglected you. She swallowed back her tears. Where did you disappear to, Auntie? I'll find you, I promise, or die trying. Her eyes moved down the hall. Instead of snarling from the wall by the side of the photo, a once beautiful lion's head stared up at the ceiling from atop a glass-fronted credenza. Just another tattered remnant of the past. Fierce eyes, now dull with dusty cataracts. Its roar inaudible. Back then, timid as Becky was, she had been fascinated by the ferocious head, mesmerized by such a powerfully alive image of death. Come on, touch her, child, Aunt Bess said. I killed her myself while Gunter and I were on safari. Must be 15 years ago. She won't bite, I promise. Her great-aunt placed Becky's small hand on the coarse, furry head. Oh, Becky breathed. A real lioness. Magnificent, isn't she? Aunt Bess's stern face lit up, and her smoky laughter boomed through the house. To the left of the credenza stood the same hall table Beck remembered from her childhood, topped by the same glass tank containing the same dead reptiles. A baby crocodile and two stumpy-tailed blue-tongue lizards still lurked in the semi-dark. At 8, she had no knowledge of anything other than the small, untidy city unit where she and her parents lived. How exciting this strange house had seemed to her. What wonders it held. What are they? Becky asked. Her great-aunt took some pains with her explanations, enjoying the chance to educate. Becky's attention wandered as her eyes explored the other photos and memorabilia on the walls. Come with me. Aunt Bess grabbed the little girl's hand and led her to a door hidden behind the staircase. Open it, she commanded. Becky looked up. Go ahead, her aunt encouraged, her eyes promising excitement and adventure. Becky's hand turned the large metal knob and pulled the door's heaviness wide. They descended into the cool cellar. Along with the root vegetables and pantry shelves loaded with preserves and pickles, stood a long glass case containing an enormous saltwater crocodile, caught mid-snap. That's the croc that got my Gunter. I plugged the bastard right between the eyes, I did, Auntie said. Too late to save Gunter, though. She paused. In the end, I couldn't bear to have the horrid creature on display upstairs. But neither can I get rid of him. He is my last contact with my darling Gunter. They are one. The creature was repulsively fascinating. He had a long snout, hooded eyes, and a wide head jammed onto his body, which widened out around his middle and tapered down to a long tail. Becky squatted down near the huge reptile's head. Its open maw was full of vicious-looking teeth. His eyes looked alive. He was hungry. He was angry. He wanted revenge. Arg! Becky jumped up and hid her face in Aunt Bess's skirt. What on earth's got into you, child? He's alive. He wants to eat me. Her aunt wrapped her in a warm embrace and gave a laugh. You silly goose. He is quite dead, I assure you. Come on, time for cordial and cake. Beck could hear her aunt's deep laughter and booming voice echoing up from the past. A shiver of apprehensive excitement tingled her spine. Is the beast still down there? She turned to her left. Beck sucked air, felt her bladder contract. Falstaff stood in the doorway, watching her. He raised his eyebrows in benign inquiry. She ignored him. The cellar door opened easily this time. She flicked on the light. A single bare bulb dangling from the cobwebbed ceiling struggled to throw off the gloom. It moved in the slight breeze, creating weird, moving shadows. Musty air spiraled up to her, redolent with memories. The rough, strong feel of Aunt Bess's hand, the smell of earthy vegetables, the sharpness of pickling vinegar, and the sight of that amazing creature, so dangerous, so dead. With a dry mouth, Beck ducked her head and thudded down the dusty, wooden stairs. The glass case was empty. The lid hung to one side. The outline of the creature was clear in the dust, as though he had only recently vacated his glass coffin. Where had he gone? Beck's nostrils flared, assailed by a fetid, swampy miasma. She searched the shadows, half expecting to find the reptile hiding in their depths. Idiot, she mocked herself. A noise rustled behind her. She swung to face the stairs. A shadow stepped forward. "Jesus, Falstaff." She clenched her hands and spoke through her teeth. "You nearly gave me a heart attack. I am sorry I startled you." Falstaff's oily obsequiousness belied the glint in his dark orbs. He gave a snort, showed his teeth. Beck stared into the reptilian black of his expressionless, hooded eyes. Her pupils dilated. She found herself unable to move, unable to think. He stepped closer, brought up his hand. Cool leather caressed her face. The cobwebbed light flickered, giving his movements a jerky, surreal effect. She smelled the earthy, overpowering maleness of him. Her senses reeled. Time held its breath. "What you want?" Beck forced the words from her constricted throat. "Just you," he grunted. "My Becky." She moved her head from side to side. "No, you've always known. You, the last remnant of Bess," Falstaff hissed. He lifted his other hand, placed it at the base of her throat, where her carotid pounded irregularly. His grip tightened. Goose flesh prickled Beck's spine. Her heart fluttered in its bony cage. She couldn't withdraw her gaze, couldn't move. He brought ice-cold lips down. His fetid breath entered her lungs. The flickering light snapped off the mannequin in the lake. Johnny and Sally didn't believe me when I told them the mannequin in the water had saved me from drowning. Well, something had pulled me down, and I suspected it had been her, but I didn't mention that part to my friends. Instead, I pointed to the exact spot where I believed she'd pulled me up from the rough Lake Michigan water. They laughed out loud. "It's true." Her arms swayed forward and back. "I swear." I motioned with my arms the same way the mannequin had done so. The marshmallow that was supposed to be for my s'more slipped out of my fingers. Sand covered my piece. For God's sake, I'd been looking forward to making them with my buddy and his girl. Sally guffawed. "You're so stupid, you know that? Plus, if you would have gotten more practice in class, you wouldn't have almost drowned." "Maybe I shouldn't be here with your stupid asses," I said, glowering at Johnny, who'd had the bright idea of skipping school. Just because he'd said, but I knew why. Because of her. Johnny had skipped school so many times that the teachers probably didn't even care to find out where he was. Me, though, this was only my second time. The first time was just a few days ago, the day the mannequin had saved me. I hurled the marshmallow into the water and watched as it floated away. But when the tip of a mannequin's fingers sprang out of the water and took my piece in, a shiver ran down from the top of my head to the end of my toes. Did you guys see that? Bro! Here. Johnny split his s'more in half, the gooey center stretching like fresh, out of the deep fryer mozzarella sticks. My buddy Johnny and I had been friends for 4 years now. Since first grade, my only friend. All the other kids sided with him always. But when I tried talking to them, they'd ignore me. Yes, I longed for more friends. And yes, I felt a little jealous of Johnny's charisma. But I knew I was lucky to have Johnny in my life. My only friend. I helped him with his schoolwork, and he got me out of trouble. Always took the blame, no matter what shenanigans we got into. And this time was no exception. He had a fake doctor's note ready for us, and if the teachers and parents found out it was fake, he'd say he'd planned it all. Sally, though, we'd just met her this year in 5th grade. The moment I laid eyes on her, my heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst out of my chest. Little hearts formed around her head, just like in the cartoons. But just as quick as I'd fallen for her, she took a liking to Johnny, and they hit it off. And she often rolled her eyes at me. At the end of the pier that was yards and yards away, water splashed. I squinted to get a good look. Figured something had been thrown into the water and washed ashore, for it was usually like that. Guests came to the lake, swam, held parties. Music blasted at full volume, and instead of taking care of the lake that provided them with the best Saturday and Sunday parties and cookouts, they littered the water and the sand. Even the junkies left their pills, and needles scattered their poison, which became a scavenger hunt for the other junkies and beach cleanup crew. I took a few steps away from Johnny and Sally, then turned to tell them I'd be back, that I wanted to see what was at the pier. But Johnny and Sally began to make out. They kissed, as fake as the telenovela actors my mother watched every evening from 6 to 9. And she ignored me those 3 hours. In fact, I was on my own most of the time, whether she was home or not. She either worked, watched TV, or locked herself in her bedroom. When I arrived at the pier, I made my way under the boardwalk. The clouds that had gathered darkened the underpier, but I could still make out the figures that stood still. It was like they'd met for a secret meeting, and I'd just discovered them. "Hi," my voice said, struggling to get that one word out. Not one of them minded me, but I could hear their whispers. I inched closer. Their whispers stopped. At the end of the underpier, where the water and sand met, there she was, my mannequin, my savior. I went to her, avoiding the still figures. But as I neared them, a harsh gust of wind pushed me down to the sand, close to them. "Push," I heard them whisper. "Water," they continued. My breathing increased at the thought of these lifeless models somehow communicating. I looked up at them. The figures had their heads turned to me. How? I had no clue. They had no eyes, no mouths. In fact, there was nothing on them but the head, arms, legs, and torso that made them up. Naked, motionless. and though they weren't looking at me directly, their gaze was fixed on me. I pushed myself up and walked backward, away from them, away to the light past the underpier. But before my body touched the light, one of them blocked me. It was her. I knew it. There was a connection between us. I turned to her. The arm that had stopped me remained up in the air. "Bring," they said. And I turned to them. No realizing when, she pushed me, and again, I was down. Sand kicked in my face. No idea which of them had done it, because when I looked up, they remained still. Now, they were closer. How many were they? 9, perhaps. 10, if you counted her behind me. Where was Johnny? Sally? Still making out? Friend? Forever. Us? Never leave. They had a cultish demeanor about them. When they spoke, it was chant-like, but like they were speaking to me. "Water?" she said behind me. "Lake." "What? You want me to go into the water?" "Us. Forever." Friend. Were they recruiting me? "I can't," I cried. The sand that covered my hand scratched my eyes. "My mom, she'll get worried. My friends, they'll come looking for me soon. She hate," one of them whispered. "Who? My mom? Sally?" "He lost," another one said. "Johnny." Had I lost my friend to her? We friends. The one behind me tugged at my shirt. Her hand already pointed at the water. I turned to my friends. For a moment, it looked like Johnny had noticed me and locked eyes with me. Then, Sally turned his face away, to hers. Whether she hated me or disliked me, what was true was that she didn't consider me her friend. She was all about Johnny. I turned to the mannequins under the pier. There were 8 now, plus she, who had saved me, still behind me. The one missing was now in the lake, its torso above the water, its arms extended, ready to receive me. "Friends forever," I whispered. The whisper in the city. The dark skeletons of skyscrapers stretched into the twilight sky. I trudged along an empty street, my feet dragging through the damp sand, leaving deep grooves behind me. How long had I been here? I couldn't tell. The overcast horizon was slowly growing lighter, the mist thinning with each passing moment. The street seemed familiar to me, but any landmarks that might have been here before were completely effaced now. Everything around me was falling apart, disintegrating into sand that covered every inch of the ground. Suddenly, a soft, faint whisper came from somewhere in the distance. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen anyone else in this desolate place, so I shuffled toward the sound. The voice came again, this time a little closer and more insistent, but I still couldn't make out the words or pinpoint where it was coming from. I tried to pick up my pace, but the sand was dense and viscous between my toes. The whisper kept calling, getting clearer, as though someone was tuning a radio. It was soothing, but firm. I sensed it wished me no harm, at least as long as I did what it told me to. Finally, I understood what it was saying. "Come on, just a little bit further," the voice urged. It seemed like it was coming from a building to my right. I stared into the shadows in the gaping doorway that led into a dark hall. Nobody was there. I caught a reflection in one of the grimy shards of glass jutting from a window frame. Was it me? It couldn't be. How could I be this old and shriveled? I turned away and wandered toward the low horizon. "We need to get ready. Somebody is coming," the voice called from up ahead. A warm rain suddenly began to fall. It frothed in my hair and trickled down my cheeks. The air filled with a strange scent, something fresh and sweet. It didn't seem right. Rain shouldn't smell like that. The voice kept coaxing me forward, and I kept on wading through fragrant sheets of rain, my feet squelching in the soggy sand. After a while, the rain stopped, and the sky cleared a little, though the sun was still hidden behind the thick veil of clouds. The lukewarm mist curled around every turn, filling the streets that branched out from the crossroads I passed. If only it were clear enough to see what lay in the distance. Maybe then I could remember. Just as I reached the next junction, the whisper gave me a new command. "All right, let's get something to eat. Come on now. Turn here." I looked from side to side. Across the road to my left stood the remains of a diner. I plodded toward the building through the endless sand. I thought there couldn't possibly be anything to eat here, but as I stumbled over the threshold, I caught a whiff of toast and coffee. The diner was as decayed as everything else in this city. There was less sand inside than on the street, but it still covered the floor with an even layer. The display counter stood empty, the glass shattered. Here and there, overturned furniture lay scattered across the ground. The upholstery on the chairs and benches had rotted away a long time ago. The cup-shaped clock on the wall was missing its hands. Decay, dust, and sand. There was no one inside. Still, I heard muted whispers coming from every corner, buzzing like cicadas on a summer night. I moved through the room, trying to make out what the voices were saying, but there were just too many of them now. I shuffled through the jumbled chairs and tables to the center of the room. Here, on one of the tables, sat a plate of food and a cup of coffee. My stomach rumbled. There were no utensils, so I grabbed the food with my hands, stuffing it into my mouth. The toast was crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. The omelet was fluffy and creamy. The coffee was strong and sweet. How long had it been since I had last eaten anything? I wasn't sure. It felt like ages. Suddenly, the air around me shimmered as though in a heat haze. The dilapidated diner faded away, and I found myself in a warm, sunlit kitchen. Light wood furniture, a crisp tablecloth, plates with delicate flower patterns on the rim. A woman stood in front of the stove. Her hair fell in neat waves, and she wore a light blue fit and flare dress. She turned to me and smiled. "Georgie, would you like another piece of toast?" she asked. Was she talking to me? Was that my name? I wanted to ask her what was going on, but before I could find the words, the mirage disappeared. I was back in the decaying diner, an empty plate before me. "Okay, George, you're done? Let's go now," the whisper cooed. I followed the voice back into the street. It kept urging me forward with its bright, incessant tone. Well, at least now I knew my name. But all the other questions still whirled in my head. What did the voice want from me? Where was I going? How long had I been here? Who was I? Really, it felt like this mess in my head would boil over, washing away all this dirty sand and all the debris of this dead city. I gritted my teeth, clenched my fists, and plowed forward. At last, the road led me to a park. Patches of grass poked through the sand. The trees, covered in yellow and red leaves, peeked through the fog, taunting me. A path lined with benches led into the mist. "All right, let's sit down here." I settled onto the nearest bench. Quiet fragments of music fluttered to me from somewhere far away. The sound was comforting, familiar. The voice hummed around me for a moment before fading into the background. The music grew louder and steadier. I thought I recognized the melody, but couldn't quite put my finger on it. It reminded me of someone I used to miss. I sat alone, enveloped by the soothing blanket of music, staring at the colorful trees before me. Bit by bit, my angst and frustration melted away. After a while, I heard the whispers again. The voice that had been guiding me was talking to somebody else now. The new voice seemed familiar, like I'd heard it sometime long ago, in another life. I felt a movement in the air beside me. Someone touched my hand. "Dad? Dad, it's me." "Chad." The small room was tidy and clean, as nice as a room in such a facility could be. The curtains were open, and you could see a small park colored in gold and red by the approaching cold. An old jazz standard was flowing from the player in the corner. A woman sat on a stool beside an armchair where an old, frail man rested. She held his hand. "I'm sorry, Miss Ross. He's not having a good day today," a nurse said gently from behind the armchair. To be honest, they're few and far between now, and it's hard to say how many more he'll have. I know, but it's still so hard. It's like he's wandering further and further away, the woman said, wiping the corner of her eye. Dad, it's Katie. I'm here. His dry, thin fingers tightened around hers. Dear Death, dear Death, hello, old friend. I would be amiss if I called you a stranger now, as the frequency of your visits in my life have made us more than acquaintances. It has been years since our first run in together. When I met you, I didn't understand. You were a being within yourself, a standalone, vital force that I didn't recognize for what you really stood for. Your introduction to me preceded the death of my grandpa on September 24th, 1998. The mighty being that he was, the biggest form of life I knew, was ripped from me, and you were the thief that came in and stole him. He lived a long life, I was told, satisfied and a job well done. But as I heard these things, none of them gave me comfort. Silently, I began to develop distrust. You made me weary of so many things, of bonds formed with those around me, of meaningful, lasting love that would carry me through hardships, and of you, death itself, and that you could take from me in an instant what life had freely given me to experience. I was only 13 years old, but I knew you were someone I needed to always watch out for. That you would be there even while I smiled and enjoyed life, and the moments it actually made me smile. I thought we wouldn't meet again for years to come. I thought I had given enough of my heart to you when I was a child to buy my way through years of togetherness with those that I loved. I thought my heartache was payment enough, but you had other plans. September 6th, 2020, the eldest of my grandfather's children, his only baby girl, was taken. You started with a queen. I must tell you, and her death hit me hard. My auntie was the most thoughtful, caring, most, even if I don't have my life together, I'm going to look out for you, most amazing woman I have ever known. She was loud, boisterous, fun-loving, but would teach you a well-needed lesson. She was the oldest of all boys, so she was tough. Yet, even she was no match for you and your exploits. You took her from us and never looked back. June 27th, 2021. I learned my first lesson on how unfair you could be. My 12-year-old cousin was snatched away so fast by you. None of us seen it coming. For the first time in my life, I saw a mother so broken by her grief, she could barely speak. A father so lost without his son, he could barely stand before the casket that held him and say goodbye. But most of all, your grim visit showed me that no matter how much I loved my children, or tried to protect them from the harsh realities of the life, when it really mattered, my love couldn't save them from you. No amount of protecting them in the world would keep them from your grasp when you decided to whisk through my life and take them or someone else I love. November 1st, 2022. You sought me out in the worst of ways. You knew all too well my fears and panic over the remote possibility of me losing one of my children. Knew all too well that it would destroy me. Opening the door to my daughter's room that day, I walked into my nightmare, made my reality. Death, you take many a soul, every night, always there to absorb the essence of those we lose. So I know you heard my whispered words in the night. I know you knew, down to the fiber of your being, my worst fear. I know you knew my truth as deep and as well as I did. So when realized, you took my daughter, another bright light that those around me, who have nothing else to offer as comfort, will say was a life gone too soon. It solidified my ill thoughts of you, that you didn't play fair, that you took every opportunity to fight dirty. My daughter, one piece of my tattered heart that I managed to birth and have walk around personified, flesh and blood. You take her, and not me. You felt, as you always do, that it was time, that she had done all she was here to do, and that again, it was a job well done, and she no longer had to face a world where depression and sadness touched her. The traumas she experienced and always took her mind to a place where I couldn't reach her, would never again have her lost. Here, I have to be honest with you, Death. As much as I hate to even say your name, I am overjoyed that the ugliness of life can never reach her again. But I needed more time. 15 years will never be enough. I look for her in the moon, as I know you walked her toward it. However, I will forever say, you're unfair. She was my glue, that kid that kept us all together. She was just finding her smile, her real smile, just finding a reason beyond me, as she told me, to live her life to the fullest. You took her little sister's person, and the one she talked to all the time, her brother's game partner, whom he discovered new levels on soul caliber with, her big sister's binge show watcher, and how they could watch whole seasons together in one night, her father's favorite, and how he doted on her mama number two's confidant, and how she helped her realize it was okay to love herself. You took my partner in crime, my me and you against it all, if you will, the one who would make me smile even when the world sought out my tears. Shame on you. In losing her, I lost myself, and I have no one else to blame but you. How dare you take my child from me? Have you not taken enough in your time with me? From your time with everyone? From the unexpected parents who should never have to bury their children, or the children you've orphaned? Has your roster not been filled with mothers and fathers, beloved aunts or favorite uncles? My daughter's name was too pure to be added to your list, and as the world moved on, going back to the daily hustle and bustle, I'm here stuck in the moment. You ripped my sanity to shreds, and in the far reaches of my mind, I can hear the echoes of your laughter. And I know you feel pleasure in the grief you leave in your wake. That is when all the "I'm here if you need me's" or the "call me anytimes" slow down, and the quiet nights last longer than you ever imagined they could last. I always come back to you. I think about how you have visited me so many times just to destroy my peace and disrupt my every day. The day you took my daughter, you took a piece of me too, and you have left me forever, grasping at the dark threads of your coattails, trying to hold on to the part of me you are trying to take, my grip constantly slipping, but I can't let go. To let go of you would mean I lose my grasp on her. The only thing that pulled me through was my support system that surrounded me and helped me recover from your violent breeze of a visit. Your homecomings always come with tears and loss. I'm finally coming to realize. August 11th, 2023. You paid me a visit once again, but this time I expected you. The cancer that ravished my uncle's body and had him giving up on life were signs that alerted me. You weren't far behind. Out of the 7 uncles I have, he was my favorite. When I came out and introduced the family to my now wife, he was the one who protected me from judgment and harsh words. Any problem with me had to go through him first, and he accepted me even before my father told me he loved me still. We could talk about anything, and we did. We talked about religion, life, politics, love, relationships, and more. There was never any judgment. My whole life, he loved me for me. Yet again, you decided we had enough of the mighty presence he exuded, and you snuffed his light out after a long, hard-fought battle. The only solace I take in his passing is that he no longer has to go through that pain. And I suppose, deep down, if I'm honest, I should thank you for that. But that's where my thanks for you ends. Death. If you're still with me, I promise I'll tell you why. I had the honor for 39 years to have a man in my life who stood through it all. A man who, no matter what the test that was thrown at him, he found a way to make it work. How he stood tall against adversity. Who made sure he built and had the foundation to bring to any table. A man who showed up whenever called upon. Who had so much wisdom that he imparted. whether you wanted him to or not, and always did it with love. And it was exactly what you needed to hear. I had the pleasure of calling this man my father. When I seen him when he lost his own father, I watched him put his grief to the side to stand tall for his sister and brothers. How I seen him tuck his fear of you, death, and stand in the place you had just removed his father from and lead his family. When I seen this, I seen a mighty, strong man that stood against it all, including you, to make a way for his entire family. Not just his children, but for his brothers, wife, and anyone he came into contact with. He exuded strength in a way that made even you, death, stand still, if only for a while. For as you always do, you creeped and snaked your way in and preyed on most anyone's worst fear, losing the ones they love. You always find a way to strike when our defenses are down and our hearts are at their fullest. My father's strength is what I always leaned on, what I drew from. When I was weak, he poured his strength into me, even if he didn't know it. Whenever I called for him, he showed up, no questions asked. It was this example he set for me that allows me to show up for my children in the same way. When I needed my father, he was more to me than anyone could ever be. Yet the smile that man brought to my face shined too bright for you to know that he was one of the main reasons I survived. You selfishly taking my daughter from me. To know he poured so much life into me, even though you had tried your hardest to break me. To know that I no longer have that strength to call upon has broken me in a way I never knew a person could break. I see you relish in the pain you cause as you unfairly take the children of strangers, mothers who have lost their young ones, just like me. You make me know them in a way I never would understand, unless I too, like them, have you as a friend. We know you're toxic, but we're stuck with you, attached for the rest of our lives. I never wanted to know them, or you like this. The next year, I began to unbend myself, for what had been meant to destroy me didn't, although it definitely bent me almost to my breaking point. I became complacent and comfortable, taking for granted phone calls and visits with those I held dear, thinking I had those moments in abundance. I became forgetful of the power and pain you wielded so freely and without favorites, because I hadn't seen you for over 365 days. I relaxed enough to think, I can finally breathe. It hurts, and it's labored, and feel like needles poke me with every intake. But I can take a breath, and it feels like I never have before. 2024 for me was a year of realization, reckoning, redirection, and remembrance. And I must admit, the embedded hate I constantly feel for you, the fear of you that I always have on the back burner of my mind, took a back seat to my goals and achievements and my planning to make things better for me and my family, and do them to honor my daughter's memory. It was a time for promises made and kept, to do better for her than I had been doing in the time since she'd been gone. For I had lost myself for a long time because of your thievery. When I lost her, I lost a large part of who I was, and I spent months on an alcoholic whirlwind. It was my father who finally broke through my hazy merry-go-round with his love and understanding and words of wisdom and support. I'm 39, and I still have yet to make a single decision without him. His opinion has always held a heavy weight in what I decide to do, no matter how big or small the decision. To you, however, my decisions are irrelevant and null in void. For you decided, once again, that I'd had enough. And when you decide things, your decisions come with such finality. I'm starting to understand that you see our fears and they empower you. You made me realize, in real time, one of my worst fears. And yet, not even a full 3 years from the date I lost my baby, and you took the air form my lungs, you're still searching the inner reaches of my being for more, saying gleefully to yourself, who else is she scared of losing that I can take and watch how she crumbles? On January 27th, 2025, my pillar of strength, my Papichu, my Superman, breathed his last breath. He kissed my mother on her cheek, told her he loved her, waited until he was alone with you, and followed you onto the abyss. How can he be gone? He's Superman. I assume you were his kryptonite. He knew he was close and felt you hovering. But he knew all too well our fear of losing someone else, and that fear of you hurting us again kept him quiet. You stole his voice, and he couldn't let us know his true pain. Although I didn't think I would see you again for years to come, when I felt you this time around, you were like a fragrance in the air that I recognized instantly. I hate that you are so familiar to me. You took my daddy. How could you? When I got the call carrying the worst news I could hear, I knew it was because of you, before a word was spoken. You, death, have left me truly on my own in this world, with this constant, pulsing, alive, reverberating fear of your next coming, and who you will take this time. I don't even know if I fear you anymore. More so, I now expect you to unexpectedly without any preparation on my part, will float through my life and etch notches in me as if I were a wall measuring the continued growth of a child. You have shattered my already broken heart into 1,000,000 pieces, and all I can manage is this plea, death. I plead with you. Let us once again become strangers. Let us become so distant. The thought of remembrance between us is alien. I want to know you no more. Flee from me, and touch not any more of those I love. I have given enough of my heart as payment for the bonds I've created, and you have severed. Please sail away on the ocean of tears. You have forced me to cry and never return to me. Signed, your well-known, but very reluctant and unwilling friend, Khalees. See you soon, Claire. You didn't think you could just leave, did you? I've always known where you were. That little bus station in the city, that motel with the flickering sign on the side of the motorway. I was watching you, even then. How you clutch your bag when you sleep. How you leave the TV on static to drown out the sound of your thoughts. You're clever, slippery, but not clever enough. I have to admit, you know how to cover your tracks, but you should know that you can't shake off your own tail. You're not running away from me. You're running toward me. You'll see soon. Sweet dreams. Wow. Creepy. Not sure how you got this address, but congrats, I guess. Nice to know I'm living rent-free in your head. FYI, the bus station smelled like pee, and the motel had roaches. So maybe put your stalking budget toward better accommodations next time. Only, of course, if there is a next time. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Also, if you're going to kill me, maybe don't warn me first. That's kind of, I don't know, sloppy. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going on a hitchhiking date with a guy named Dave. He says he's got a van. Don't worry, I checked, and there's no candy. Best, Claire. Concern. Dave has a record. 2 assaults. 1 missing person case. You're not as sharp as you think. Do you know how easy it would be for me to get to you? To pull you from that van before Dave even knows what's happening? The door's unlocked. Sleep tight. Very funny. Except you can't be outside because I'm writing this from the bathroom at a gas station. And I'm pretty sure the only person outside is the clerk on his smoke break. Unless you've taken up vaping? Mint flavored, I hope. But seriously, do you actually think this whole mysterious stalker act is working? Because from where I'm sitting, on a suspiciously sticky toilet seat, by the way, you owe me for that. You sound kind of desperate, following me across 3 states, tracking my every move, writing me these cryptic little notes like some kind of B-list Bond villain. Feels like a lot of effort for someone who insists they're the one in control. And if you know so much, if you've been watching me this whole time, tell me this. Why am I running? Seriously. Enlighten me. You should know why. Unless you don't, which would mean you're not half as smart as you think you are. I need to stop writing now, since someone's knocking on the stall door, and I don't feel like explaining why I've been loitering in the bathroom with a notepad. Best, Claire, and you're running because you're scared, but not of me. The thing you're running from is already in the room with you. Turn around. I think you've got this whole dynamic twisted. You think I'm scared of you? Cute. You've been following me, sure. But have you noticed the trail of bodies in my wake? Dave made it exactly 27 miles before he swerved into a ditch. Poor guy. Guess he shouldn't have tried to pull that knife. The clerk at the gas station. You'll see his face on the news soon. Well, most of it. So yeah, maybe I'm running, but not from you. You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. See you soon. Interesting. You always were a quick study. I underestimated you. My mistake. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not hunting you anymore. I'm inviting you. There's a cabin in the woods, just outside the circus. Red door, broken window. I'll leave the door unlocked. If you're as brave as you think you are, come find me. Or maybe I'll find you first. By circa, you mean the festival extravaganza, right? Cute. I'll bring wine, and maybe a shovel. See you soon, Claire. I knew you'd come. I saw you the second you stepped into the woods. That red jacket of yours stands out in the dark like a beacon. You really should have chosen something less noticeable, or maybe you wanted me to see you. Either way, you're here now. I left a present for you. I thought I might as well give you a chance. The knife I pinned this letter down with is all yours. I trust you know how to use it. Do you feel it? The cold sinking into your bones? The silence pressing down on you? That sound behind you? The snap of a branch that wasn't an animal. You've been so clever up to this point, so slippery, so sharp. But even the smartest prey makes a mistake eventually, and you've just made yours. Don't bother running. I'm already behind you. You're right. I felt you the moment I crossed the tree line. I knew you were there. I could almost hear your breathing. Shallow, controlled, waiting. But you made a mistake, too. You let me get too close. I know it's rude. But I'm going to have to return you kind gift. A girl can't have too many of a good thing, or it gets boring. I felt the heat of your breath on the back of my neck, and I smiled, because I'm not scared of you anymore. Not that I ever was, and you'll never get the chance to write me again. Clever girl, but not clever enough. See you soon. An incident report. Missing person. Claire Marie Jenkins. Location: isolated cabin. Festival extravaganza. Details: the cabin was found empty upon arrival. Blood splatters were present, but no bodies recovered. Signs of struggle. One broken window. Unidentified footprints lead into the woods. No return tracks. A single sheet of paper was discovered, pinned to the cabin wall with a knife. It read, "Not yet. Claire is presently missing at time of report. Background checks show that she must have changed her identity. Or she didn't have any family, immediate or extended. Case remains open. Cliffhanger." By Lee Kendrick. I had never been to a tropical country before, but Indonesia was my friend's, and I chose a holiday destination after we had scanned the internet for tropical countries. We all agreed to go to the Indonesian island of Sumba, an island as large as Jamaica. Apparently, Indonesia boasts the most islands of any country. Unbelievably, over 17,000. My friends Michael, Bob, and I, Dave, had booked a holiday here for 2 weeks. We planned to do some snorkeling, exploring the coral reefs, and go on some boat trips to some of the Indonesian islands. For now, we were just chilling out on a sun lounger, drinking cold beers on the white sands of the Mbawana beach. The Sumba Island landscape is so rich in exotic plants and animal life. It also boasts unusual rock formations, including the halfling giant stone. This is a coastal rock with a large gaping hole through it. In fact, me and the boys are just 30 feet away from it to our left. Another unusual thing about Indonesia is the Indian Ocean. It changes color, varying from turquoise to ultramarine blue to a remarkable golden orange. Another thing this part of the world is known for is its earthquakes and tsunamis. Just a few minutes ago, we felt a heavy earthquake, but this was normal for Indonesia. We were glad we weren't in a city full of buildings. The tremor only lasted for about 20 seconds, and then it just fizzled out. Nothing to worry about. Feeling hot, I decided to go for a dip in the ocean. As I slowly walked in the soft, powdery white sand towards the ocean, I sensed a foreboding. And for some reason, I noticed it was taking me longer than usual at this time of day to arrive by the ocean. I also observed pools of seawater with seaweed, crabs, and other sea creatures, which weren't there before. And I'm sure by now I would have been hearing the waves come crashing onto the beach. But the ocean seems much further away. Then it dawned on me as I stared out into the distance. There it was, a few miles away, a massive wall of water. Difficult to measure, but I would say it must be at least 50 feet high, and it was heading towards the beach. It was a tsunami. I had heard in documentaries about how the ocean suddenly withdraws from a beach, heralding a tsunami. Is this my time to die? I thought. I turned and ran as fast as I could, back towards my friends, wearing my stupid flip-flops. As I ran, I observed dozens of people lying on their beach towels, oblivious to what was about to happen. I attempted to shout to warn them, but no words would come from my mouth. I was unable to speak because I was in the grip of fear. I managed to attract a couple's attention, but they just waved back at me. and continued sunbathing. I picked up a heavy shell and threw it at them, and then pointed frantically towards the wall of death. I ran and ran, painfully slowly, getting closer towards my friends. Then my friends Michael and Bob saw me. I waved with both hands, frantically in desperation, to try and warn them as I pointed back to the ocean. They just seemed to ignore me. Finally, I reached Michael and Bob to pull them away. My larynx was constricted, paralyzed. I couldn't utter one word as I pointed back towards the ocean. A bloody, gigantic, blue-green wave was only a couple of 100 yards away. By now, there were people screaming everywhere on the beach. We all started running. But where? Where do we go? Do you climb a tree? The waves are too high. Do we try to outrun it? No. It's too close behind us, and it must be moving at over 100 per now. Do we go left or right? Maybe the wave isn't as long as the beach. Very unlikely we could escape it. It probably stretches as far as the length of the beach. We kept on running in front for our lives. As the adrenaline coursed through our veins, I spotted the cliff some 50 yards away. The tsunami was now so close behind us, you could hear its thunderous roar, like a wild beast after its prey. As we managed to reach the cliff, we climbed as rapidly as we could, managing some 30 feet when the wave crashed heavily into the cliff. It demolished the halfling giant stone and engulfed the surrounding area. The beach had been swallowed up, and the ocean continued to climb, moving closer towards us. This wild beast wasn't done until it caught up with us, all three of us, now exhausted, and like a gazelle, tired out with all its energy, spent. It was ready to drop and resign its fate to the beast chasing after it. I knew it was just only seconds away before the wave would claim me and my two friends. Suddenly, my heart stopped beating. To my horror, I was unable to lift my leg up to a ledge. It had got entangled in some plant's tendrils. Bob and Michael were too busy escaping to not notice me in trouble. The water was now up to my ankles as I frantically moved my foot to budge it free. The boat just wouldn't move. By now, I resigned to the fact that I was going to drown. As a 26-year-old, I was hoping for longer on this earth, and I just wish Bob and Michael escaped the wave. The water was now rising up to my neck. I closed my eyes and saw flash images of my mother, dad, sister, and brother. But wait a moment. Why hasn't the water covered me yet? I thought. The next thing I noticed was the water level was going down. It was now down to my feet, and I was able now to budge my foot free. The water was drawing slowly away, down to where the ocean and beach would normally meet. I looked up to the top of the cliff, and there, looking down, were my two buddies, Michael and Bob, waving to me laughing. We all had a miracle escape. Sadly, many tourists didn't, and they're coming. They're coming. The whispers carried by the wind. The repeat of words started yesterday morning, from the moment my bare feet touched the wooden planks of the wrapped-around porch. The corn swayed slowly. Anticipation, knowing they would soon pick up their speed. Sounds of the horses shifting around the fields, anxiety fueling them. They knew just as well as I did what was to come. The clouds in the distance were dense. The light around the house shined bright for now. The blanket of clouds would take that away. Soon, too soon. The pitter-patter of little feet sounded from behind me. A hand wrapping around my finger, giving a slight tug. Her bright blue eyes would be boring into me. Those beautiful eyes she adopted from her father. If only he was here, they wouldn't be coming. They would leave us be. They would keep their distance. They knew what the consequences were, but no contact, no letters, no information of where he was or when he would come home, left us in the foreboding shadows. The war was bound to come. Unfortunately, we knew that. The day the papers came, he looked at me. The look of knowing all too well. He would be called upon, leaving us to fend for ourselves, while he went God knows where, to defend the great land we call home. The last letter received was over a month ago now. We sent one in return within the week. Concerns the officers would come bringing devastating news filled the house, weighing the air down. Another tug released me from my trance. I looked down, mustering a smile as best I could. Guiding her back into the house, setting her up in the chair for breakfast. Eggs, toast, and fresh bacon from one of the sows lay in front of her. Coffee was the choice for me. Hunger was gone. I felt nothing of the sorts. Thirst controlled me. Coffee, water, and milk satisfied me for the time being. A bang sounded outside. My eyes snapped to see through the fogged window from grime. Something else to add to my list of things to do. The dust and dirt picking up from the fields created a layer. A goat was taking time to practice butting again, lining up to go again with one of the poles surrounding them. The clouds were closer. Too much to do before they would be here. Too little time. Another tug. This time, my dress. I felt the hole in the side tear a little bit more. Another thing to fix around this place. I turned. Her shoes were on her feet, and mine were in her hands. The plate behind her was polished off, and the cup with remnants of milk sat beside it. Her head cocked to the side. A nod returned. Sliding my feet into my boots, we headed out to accomplish the never-ending tasks plaguing us. Night fell quickly, and the clouds were almost here. By morning, they would be on top of us. The sounds of the restless animals in the barn through the open window next to my bed. Creaks of the old house moving with the wind called out in various parts. The nerves, the knowing of what's coming, getting to me, all while she slept peacefully in her bed. No worries in the world, aside from making sure the animals were happy, and her father was okay. The adolescent hopes and dreams occupying her mind. Mine was screaming at me. Too many thoughts, too many fears, all flicking through, ready to explode out. The hope of tea helping the pain and pressure, all while it did nothing at all. It usually did not. But I lived by it, as my mother had too. Lessons she taught me, guided me quite frequently. That being just one of them. They're coming. I shuddered with the wind as it brought that news. Constant reminders. I wanted to scream out. I know all too well. Instead, I stayed quiet, fighting to go to sleep to earn some peace. Peace would not come, however. My dreams would be filled with thoughts of them coming. My husband, my child not getting everything they need. The idea of peace is just that. An idea, a hope. There was none for me. The sounds were pounding by the time my eyes opened. Light barely came through the windows. The clouds were here, and so was the shadow. My feet pounded, carrying me out onto the porch. The corn stalks now looked like they were laying down, the wind rearing its ugly face. They're coming, they're coming, they're coming. The words pounded into me. My eyes watered, dirt flying into them. I felt my way to the sink, rinsing them out as best I could. Turning, she was behind me again, head cocked to the side. Quickly fixing oatmeal, she ate while I worried. Opting to give her time off today, I set her up with her favorite things in the living room. Not before getting her dressed in her Sunday best. No hair out of place, and a bow matching her shoes. The wind howled outside. They're coming, quickly. I needed to get everything done, quickly. Forgetting my shoes, I headed to the barn, multitasking, not without dropping things. The grime now covered me, just as it did the windows. Hurry, you must hurry. Stepping out of the barn, a cloud of dust was nearing. Pounding of horseshoes coming down the way, carried with the wind, just as the words did. They're coming. Minutes. A matter of minutes. And they would be here. The dust rounded the drive at the far end of the field. My feet ran me into the house and to the bathroom. Grabbing a cloth, I wet it down and scrubbed at my flesh. The grime coming off. Slowly it felt. I was running out of time. Finally, getting the last mark off, I put my Sunday best on, running my fingers through my hair. Standing in the doorway, she was beside me, watching the cloud of dust get closer. They're coming. The wind howled again. They're coming. Car radio. The silence is deafening. Finley stares at the empty slot where the radio should be. The hole in the center console mocks him. The engine roars and jumps to life. Finley laughs at the power and presses the gas pedal. The engine responds and races down the street. He sighs and shrugs off the silence. At least it's a nice car, he thinks to himself. Finley grips the steering wheel tighter and continues to drive. He's never driven a convertible before. The large amount of snacks sits in the passenger seat. 3 bags of chips, several candy bars, a meat stick, a couple of grape sodas, Red Bull, and an orange Gatorade are piled into a small mountain next to Finley. There is also $437 in his pocket. Finley glances at the convenience store in the rear view mirror as he drives away. The gun wasn't loaded, but the clerk behind the desk didn't need to know that. She graciously gives up her drawer in exchange for her life. Finley smiles as the memory of the robbery passes through his head again. "Everything in the drawer, now!" he shouts. The clerk cries, but nods in understanding and opens the register. Ding. This is much easier with a gun, thinks Finley. He grins under his mask. He holds the basket of snacks in his free hand and points the gun at the clerk. Ida is the name on her shirt. She's short with straight black hair and small eyes. Tears run down her cheeks as she collects the bills. With a shaky hand, she gives the money to Finley. "Thank you," Finley decides to say. He runs out the store and watches as a Chevrolet Corvette pulls up to the store. An older gentleman shuts off the engine and opens the door to get out. He sees the gun before he sees Finley. "Give me the keys," Finley says loudly to the man. The elderly man jumps in surprise and quickly hands the keys to Finley. Finley dumps the basket of snacks into the passenger seat, puts the car in reverse, and drives down the road. When he is clear of the scene, he pulls off his mask and tosses it on the floor. He goes to adjust the radio, but the dial isn't there. The whole compartment is empty. Finley is an average man with an average build. His curly locks meet his eyebrows and licks his earlobes. His eyes are wide and too big for his narrow face, close together with long lashes. Stubble on his chin creeps its way up to his sideburns. The long bridge of his nose flares into broad nostrils, and his big pink lips pushes out from his face. He has a birthmark in the shape of a small diamond under his left eye. His cheeks are freckled and covered with a thin layer of dirt. Finley prefers Xbox over PlayStation and drinks apple juice more than a grown man should. He hates roller coasters because he has to sit next to strangers. He loves school, but dropped out his senior year. Finley is passionate, creative, and extremely intelligent. Finley wasn't always a thief. But the worst in his life brings out the best in him. Did I forget to feed Edison? Finley thinks to himself. Edison is his pet goldfish, who spends his days in a sphere on Finley's nightstand. Finley's hamster died in a freak vacuum accident when he was in kindergarten, and since then, he was against pets. Edison was a prize Finley had reluctantly won at a carnival. So far, he's lasted over a year and tripled in size. Finley tugs nervously at his Iron Maiden shirt as he passes a cop. He checks his speed and cautiously pulls the seatbelt over his chest and clicks it into place. He thinks, "Don't pull me over, please." He isn't ready to deal with the police. He hasn't thought this far ahead. The officer turns left and into a gas station. Finley sighs, relief, and looks back at where the radio should be. It's too quiet for him. His thoughts float carelessly through his head. He pictures himself as a police officer for a moment and laughs at the thought. If his dad was around, or if his mother stopped drinking, if his brother never beat him, and if he stayed in school. He wondered where his life would have been then. What kind of person he would be now. An outstanding citizen, he imagines, with a wife and kids. He creates the vision of his family in his head. A woman with large breasts and red hair. 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl, with toothless smiles on their dirty faces. They would be soccer players, like Finley was, and always outside. He shakes off the thought. Sucks not having a radio, he thinks. He sits up taller in the driver's seat and lets out a little scream. Ah! He relaxes and slumps back into his seat. He tries to whistle and fails, only allowing air to escape his pursed lips. He blows a tune through his teeth and grunts in frustration. I wish I knew how to whistle. Both my parents could. Even Franklin can, he says in his head. He tries again, and a small tweet of a sound flies from in between his lips. He grins at his small accomplishment. I hate tuna fish, he thinks. Finley starts to space out behind the wheel. The lack of sound tricks his brain. He visualizes a concert he went to last year. He remembers all the pockets he picked and wallets he stole. He made 5 times the amount of the cost of the tickets he paid for, but wasn't able to enjoy the concert properly. The songs of the band echoes throughout his mind. He taps the steering wheel to the beat of the song stuck in his head. He hums the melody. He looked back at the center console and sighed loudly. There wasn't even a clock. What time is it? He wondered. I should have stolen a watch. Or a car with a radio. The car was quiet. Even the purr of the engine was hushed. Everything is still, except the thoughts in Finley's head. He thinks about the graduation he never attended, the smell of his last girlfriend right before she walked out the door, the taste of sea salt ice cream, and how it was superior to any other flavor. He pictures the last family photo they had together when times were good. How Franklin had his arm around him in a rare, loving embrace. It is loud in Finley's head, and there is no sound to hide behind. He groans and tries to shake off all his thoughts, clear his head. It's no use. The thoughts always come back, stronger and louder than before. He is going mad from the silence. I can pull the steering wheel. It would be easy to wreck such a nice car. The guardrail teases Finley. He envisions the crash in his head and plays out the scene slowly. The metal twisted around the body of the convertible, the popped wheel and broken windshield. He shakes off the thought and continues driving, now upset by the concept he created in his mind. He can't distract himself from himself. There was nothing to drown out his perception of his own ideations. He can't clear his head. He's trapped within himself. Finley screams and pulls the car over. The wheels spin angrily against the dirt on the shoulder. He bangs the steering wheel with a fist and groans. He hears the sound of sirens and looks in the mirror. He didn't notice the police officer that pulled a U-turn at the last intersection. He didn't see the car behind him getting closer and closer. He watches as a police officer steps out of his squad car and aims a gun at his Corvette. Now what? This isn't part of his plan. He licks his lips and glares at his new challenge. He throws the car into drive and slams on the gas pedal. The car lurches forward and spins wildly back on the road. The cop calls it in and drives after Finley. The 2-lane road was barren. The twists and turns makes Finley feel he was back on a roller coaster without the strangers. The contents of his stomach sloshes around. Well, this is great. He wanders ahead, trying to come up with a plan. He didn't know these streets that well, and another police car pulls up alongside Finley. He kicks up the speed and lets out a yelp as the car responds. They race down the street. The sirens blare loudly. Finley watches as the police cars serve and drive around each other like synchronized swimmers after him. These guys are good, but not as good as me. I need to lose them. He thinks about car chase videos he's watched online and in movies. The bad guy always gets caught somehow, with some small mistake he plans to avoid. He turns down a dirt road quickly, but the cars behind don't falter and follow him. The dirt is slick on the wheels, and with the sharp turn, he flips the car. He curses himself as the car rolls into the ditch upside down. The sound of scrapping metal pierces his ears. It's quiet for a moment as the dust settles. He wasn't going to get caught. Especially now, they will find out exactly how many people he's robbed. He isn't planning on going to jail. Edison would miss him. "Step out of the vehicle with your hands in the air," the officer shouts, spit flying out of his mouth. They were behind open car doors, ready for Finley to react. Finley's heart races as his hands went for the unloaded gun. "You'll never take me alive, coppers," he shouts in his mind. He smiles. He was on the track and field team in high school. Surely he could outrun the police. He's done it before, with success. He pushes the car door open, and without thinking, Finley hops out the car and runs, pointing the gun behind him. His feet slip on the loose gravel, but he collects himself and moves his feet fast underneath him. He takes 3 more steps away from the police, gun heavy in his hands. Bang! The silence is deafening. To the person who buys my house. Months ago, I uprooted my entire life and moved across the country with very little plan. My wife left me out of the blue. With no tether, I cashed out my 401k and threw caution to the wind. I drove until I saw snow before deciding to try out the small town life. After nailing down a full-time job and growing tired of life in the town's only hotel, I reached out to a realtor and asked her to show me the house that's been on the market the longest. A fixer-upper was just what I needed. The realtor didn't have much information on the home outside of the basics, but I was sold as soon as I saw it. 3 stories, isolated deep in the woods. What more could a man looking to start over with a project ask for? After closing, I was given a fill folder containing all the important information. With all the standard documents was a handwritten letter from the previous homeowner. The contents of the letter have me questioning if I made the right choice, but I've never been one to turn down a challenge. I have typed the contents of the letter below. To the person who buys my house, congratulations on the purchase of your new home. Or perhaps, should I say, you're welcome for your new home. I can only imagine what type of person you may be. A first-time home buyer? A newlywed couple just starting out? A growing family looking for more space? A retiree longing to be away from the hustle and bustle of the city? Or even just an investor looking for rental properties? The possibilities are endless, but no less exciting. Just as exciting as when my late husband and I first purchased the property so many years ago. The tree covering so far off the main road made such a serene setting. We just couldn't picture ourselves living anywhere else. However, all things must come to an end. Such is life. I'm not as young as I once was. My children worried for me out here all alone. or so they say. My oldest daughter decided the property was too much for me to care for on my own anymore, and encouraged me to move to the old folks' home in the next town. As loath as I was to leave the home we spent such wonderful years in, I could no longer argue with her. The upkeep was getting to be a little much for these old bones. I agreed on one condition: that the home not be put up for sale until my death. So, if you are receiving this letter, I have shuffled off this mortal coil. That also means that the house has most likely sat vacant for some time. In that case, there are a few matters of housekeeping you should be aware of. As you may have noticed when you viewed the property, the house is quite the old gal. Her 3 stories stand tall and formidable in the dense forest surrounding it. Though the trees tower over her, she will not be cowed. The roof has held up better than we ever expected with so many trees around. It was replaced in 2018, another urging of my oldest daughter, though it had only a few cosmetic issues at the time. The trees closest to the home are sturdy and hardly ever dare to drop their branches directly on the roof. By the time you move in, it may be time for a fresh coat of paint, though I found the house does prefer to be a light blue with white trim. She likes to stand out amongst the darkness of the forest. I'll never forget the way the old gal gleamed at Christmas time, with string lights shining bright enough to light up the snow all around. Oh, I do hope you have the most wondrous Christmases there. Anyway, I've gotten off track. Yes, the house will require a new coat of paint, and I'm sure you will decorate the inside as you see fit. Before you start to move too much around, be aware that some of the items in the house have been strategically placed. For you to fully understand what a treasure you have just purchased, I feel it is pertinent for me to tell you a little story. My Reginald and I purchased the home fully furnished before any of our children were brought into this world. The first year we lived there was pure bliss. Young and in love, we dedicated almost all of our time to each other. My husband fondly referred to this time as our honeymoon phase. One of our favorite activities was exploring the vast property surrounding us. When the weather did not permit roaming, we explored the home itself, though from the outside it appears as any manor in the woods would. Inside is much to be discovered. During that first year, we enjoyed the convenience of it being fully furnished and move-in ready. But over time, I yearned to decorate, to make the space my own. Reginald, ever the obedient husband, humored me. We started by taking down every painting that hung on the walls, deciding which to keep, which to sell away, and which to simply move to a different area. That is when the first odd discovery was made. behind a great many of the paintings, there were holes, right in the plaster walls. Some appeared to be methodically cut in perfect squares. Others, as though a fist was punched straight through it. We, of course, decided that those would eventually be covered back up. I piled the painting up in the drawing room and set about cleaning the walls. By the end of the day, I had yet to decide on what exactly to do with them. So I let them lie and went to bed. In the morning, however, they were all hung perfectly back in their spots, as if all my work had never happened. For days, I assumed Reginald had done it, and he assumed I had. We ultimately didn't speak of it until it was too late, when my Reginald started back to work as supervisor of the factory in town. I resumed my endeavor to make the home feel like it was mine. I hated the big rugs scattered all around the place. I've always preferred a nice hardwood floor. No need for carpets that hold all the dirt and hair that's dragged in. The furniture was easy enough to move out of my way, and the rugs all rolled up nicely. I was mighty proud of my hard work until I got a good look at the wood. Large, dark, discolored splotches marred what should have been beautiful hardwood hiding under those ghastly rugs, which I'm sure you've seen. Unfortunately, much like the paintings, the rugs remained. I'd go into more detail, but some of the full truths have been lost to time. But I will tell you, be careful what you look behind or under. Though the house allowed me to dust and paint and add decor as my heart desired, it did not allow me to leave any of its secret spots uncovered. Behind dressers, cabinets, doors, paintings, mirrors, and under couches, chairs, and beds, the house hides. After the first year, I gave up trying to rearrange and became content with adding a few of my own touches here and there. I think that once the house realized I'd stopped trying to change it so much, it settled down. For a while at least, we entered a time of peace again. But the monotony of loneliness began to get to me. Thankfully, we soon welcomed our oldest daughter. As soon as she arrived, the house awoke with laughter and joy. All hours of the night, she would giggle, and the house seemed to echo with it, those echoes long lingering even after she fell asleep. As we welcomed more children, it seemed that no matter how much we tied, the house remained scattered with toys. It was as if I'd turn my back and they'd all jump right off the shelf and resume their places on the floor. The never-ending chore of putting away made me weary to my bones. In a stroke of wisdom, my Reginald decided one summer to send the children to my mother's for a week. She lived on the coast, never one for the colder air where we chose to live. We didn't see her often, and the children did love her so. Off they went without a complaint, leaving my love and I alone for the first time in over a decade. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. That first night, it was as if we were newlyweds again. But I won't traumatize you with any of that. We felt so young again, only waking when the sun finally shone through our bedroom window, with no rush to feed the masses. When we finally emerged from our bed a little after noon, we walked into an unexpected scene. Every toy, book, pen, shoe, and piece of sports equipment that belonged to the children had been strewn about the first floor in the most uncivilized manner. There was no question that the house had been perfectly clean the night before. Our first thought was that we'd been burgled, that someone had broken in, thinking we'd all left for the coast. The only problem is, we told no one the children were leaving, and we had no neighbors to have noticed their departure. Regardless, we checked for signs of forced entry on all the doors and windows. Finding nothing, we were forced to believe it was whatever force we had once felt in our home, agitated with us once more. As you've probably ascertained, the house is very particular. We had come to accept not being able to move the furniture or pictures, but were only just realizing that the house did not like many of the new things we'd brought in either. How many times had I picked certain toys up off the floor, only to find them there again in the morning? How many times had I unfairly blamed the children for messes they claimed they knew nothing about? That morning, we saw the truth of the matter, and I knew something had to change. The children didn't deserve my anger or anxiety. They were not to blame. When they returned, I was sure to tell them as much. But before then, we had to find a way to coexist again with the forces in the house. What should have been a week of relaxation and reconnecting became a week of trial and error. On the first day, we tidied the house, putting everything back where we thought everything should go. Each room made perfect. Then we waited for the first item to fall out of place. As if the house was testing us, it took hours for anything to happen that first day. Then it started, slowly at first, giving us time to notice the items that were out of place, time to correct. It seemed to go in order of the things that bothered it the most, or maybe just the longest. The first toy to go was a set of bells we'd gotten when our oldest was small. The set was a popular toy amongst all our babies. With our youngest being nearly 8 at the time, these bells hadn't truly rung joyously through the house in years, yet they always made their way off the shelf onto the rug. Our family's peace was more important than any sentimentality, or at least that's what my husband and I agreed. And into the bin they went. Quickly, we noticed patterns. Toys that made too much noise. Shoes that left scuffs on the floor. Sports equipment that may or may not have been involved in a few broken windows and busted light bulbs. Books that sat too heavy on the overburdened bookshelves. Room by room we went, removing any and all items the house found to be offensive. It was by no means an easy undertaking. So many items had many more years of use left in them. But knowing what I knew, I could no longer sacrifice my sanity for a few boxes full of possessions. When the last box of offending items left the property, it was as if the house itself took a deep, calming breath. I hadn't quite realized just how stressed I'd been feeling until I didn't feel it anymore. Weight I'd grown accustomed to bearing eased off my shoulders. The air was lighter, the lights were brighter, and the house even seemed to smell better. Not that there was a noticeable bad smell before. Everything just felt better. That night, Reginald and I slept deeply for the first time in years, waking refreshed and ready for anything. I was ready for my children to come home. This week had been the longest we'd been apart since the youngest was born. I'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital that time, but that's neither here nor there. We had 2 more days before my mother would return them to us, sun-kissed and spoiled rotten in the best way. In those 2 days, I made time to sit quietly and listen to the house the way I used to when it was just Reginald and myself. Familiar creaks and groans greeted my ears. My senses were filled with the house. The smell of wood, water, earth, detergents, fabric, food, all seemed to swirl around me. For a long while, it was all just the normal feelings of home, of any home. Every house I'd ever lived in had the same smells and sounds. I assume every house in the whole world has the same base set of smells, sounds, and lights. I knew there was something past that, though, here. So I waited. A few months back, I'd read a book on meditation, hoping to help lift some of the stress I'd been buried under. While I waited, I took a few quests from my readings. I methodically relaxed each muscle, starting at my toes and working my way to my head. I felt each breath as it traveled in and out of my lungs. I tried to tune my ears inward to listen to the beating of my heart, attempting to hear the blood rushing through my veins. That's when I finally heard the breathing. It wasn't my own. It was offbeat of mine. Reginald wasn't home. We had no pets, but the slow, deep, steady breaths were just a whisper in my ear. I focused with all my might on the sound, hoping to pinpoint the direction it was coming from. Realization dawned on me. I was all around me, as if I was inside a lung. Then, a heartbeat, slower than my own, reverberated around me. Slowly, I opened my eyes. What I saw changed everything. Ever so lightly, The walls billowed in and out. Ever so slightly, the chandelier above my head rhythmically bobbed, as if contracting, thrumming. Everything in the central family room moved in a steady beat. How many days had we spent in this room? The majority of our lives circulated in this room, where we were most often all together as a family, the way a family room should be used. We often joked that this room was the heart of the house, because there was always so much love here. We were not wrong. This room truly holds the heart of the home. You may think I'm crazy, but I am telling you, here and now, the house is alive. It is not haunted. There are no goblins or ghouls. The house itself is a living, breathing being, a being that I have cared for, just as it has cared for me, for more years than I care to count. You see, my daughter never believed. She did not understand. When I finally agreed that I was too old to care for the house on my own, it was because the house told me so. Not her. I was growing too old to care for it, and in turn, it could no longer care for me. It needs someone younger, someone to breathe new life into it again. And if you care for it, it will care for you. When tended to properly, it will multiply your life and give you more than you can ever imagine. I do hope Carmen found the right person to take on the challenge. I pray the house does not miss us too terribly much. If you follow the rules, then it should grow to love you, too, I'm sure. With love, Cynthia. Rule 1. Don't move the furniture. Rule 2. Don't leave any holes uncovered. Rule 3. Don't make changes. Only fix things that break. Rule 4. Don't put anything on the mantle in the bedroom. Rule 5. Never throw balls inside. Rule 6. Never scream at your partner inside. On the grounds is fine. Rule 7. Always walk gently. Rule 8. Always lock the doors. Rule 9. Always listen to the house. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. I have lived in the house for a week now. What I thought to be the ramblings of a crazy old woman who wanted nothing more than to stay with her home have quickly become undeniable truths. On my second night, the house welcomed me in a way only it could have. I'm not sure if this makes me just as crazy as her, but I vowed to care for this home as long as it cares for me. We're off to a great start. The day Los Angeles. Changed Sophia's spoon clinked against porcelain as she stirred her tea, the sound barely audible beneath the morning bustle of the morning brew. Outside the window, autumn painted the small town of San Bernardino in shades of amber and gold. So different from Los Angeles, where even fall seemed reluctant to interrupt the city's relentless energy. "You're stirring that tea to death," her mother observed, eyes crinkling with gentle humor. "Still not sleeping well?" Sophia looked up, caught in the act. Serenity Williams had always possessed an uncanny ability to read her daughter, even as cancer steadily claimed her strength. Today was a good day. Her mother sat upright without assistance, her silver-streaked hair neatly combed, her smile warm despite the hollowness in her cheeks. "Claire's having nightmares again," Sophia admitted. "And Mark's firm is restructuring, which means longer hours. I'm not sure this was the right time to visit, even for a weekend." Serenity reached across the table, her hand light but steady as it covered Sophia's. "There's never a perfect time for anything important. You're here now. That's what matters." The cafe hummed around them, baristas calling out orders, the espresso machine hissing, customers tapping away at their laptops or scrolling through their phones. On a wall-mounted television, the morning news rolled through its predictable cycle. Political tensions, economic forecasts, celebrity gossip. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. "Tell me more about Claire's school play," Serenity prompted, taking a careful sip from her cup. "You said she landed the lead role?" Sophia's face brightened. "She's playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. You should see her practicing Somewhere Over the Rainbow around the house. Mark recorded her last rehearsal. I can show you." Her words trailed off as the cafe's television caught her attention. The news had switched to a traffic helicopter shot over Los Angeles. A routine segment showing the morning gridlock. The reporter's voice carried over footage of the 405 freeway, mentioning construction delays near Westwood, where Mark worked. Expect those delays to continue through the afternoon rush hour. Alternative routes are advised for. The screen flashed white. For a fraction of a second, Sophia thought it was a technical glitch. Then the blinding light resolved into something else, as two massive fireballs erupted over the Los Angeles skyline, twin terrifying mushroom clouds climbing into the atmosphere. The helicopter camera jolted violently, the image spinning as the reporter's voice cut off mid-sentence, static. Then, blackness. The morning brew fell silent. Every conversation halted mid-word. Every movement suspended. For 3 long seconds, no one breathed. Sophia felt the world contract to a pinpoint. Sophia let slip a tiny gasp. Her coffee cup slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the floor. But she couldn't hear it. All she could see was that burning flower blossoming over her home, over Mark, over Claire. "Sophia," her mother's voice seemed to come from miles away. "Sophia, look at me." Sophia couldn't move, couldn't blink. At a loss for words, her body had turned to stone while her mind screamed. Around them, the stunned silence fractured. Someone gasped. A man at the counter swore loudly. A barista fumbled for the remote control, frantically changing channels. Each station showed variations of the same nightmare: emergency broadcasts, confused anchors, footage of the explosion from different angles. What appears to be at least 2 nuclear detonations over Los Angeles. No official statement yet from authorities, advising all residents to shelter in place. Sophia's phone vibrated in her pocket. Her heart leapt. Mark? Claire? But when she pulled it out with trembling fingers, the screen displayed only an emergency alert. National emergency declared. Shelter in place. Await further instructions. She stared at the message, its cold, bureaucratic tone at odds with the catastrophe unfolding. Desperately, she tried calling Mark's number. Nothing. She tried Claire's phone. Nothing again. Each attempt met with the same automated message. All circuits are currently busy. Please try your call again later. That sterile, mechanical voice seemed to mock her panic. All circuits busy. As if this were just another holiday, with too many calls being placed at once. As if her world hadn't just collapsed into ash. Around them, the cafe erupted into chaos. People scrambled for phones, for exits, for any semblance of control. A businessman shouted into his dead cell about evacuations. A college student sobbed openly into her hands. The barista continued flipping channels frantically, as if one might suddenly offer reassurance. Is it just LA? Someone demanded. Are there other cities? My sister's in San Diego, a woman cried. She's not answering. The terrorists might have finally developed a nuke. No, it's gotta be an accident. Nuclear war, man. The Chinese, the Russians. Outside, ancient, long disused air raid sirens began to wail. Through the window, Sophia could see people rushing down the sidewalks, some toward their cars, others seemingly without direction. A police cruiser sped past, lights flashing. Sophia's thoughts whirled like debris in a tornado. Mark and Claire, 12 miles from downtown Los Angeles. Was that close enough to the blasts? Had Mark gotten to Claire's school in time? Were they trying to leave the city or shelter in place? The questions multiplied, each more terrifying than the last. The spell binding Sophia's tongue broke, and she could finally speak. I have to go back, she whispered, then louder. I have to go back to LA. Her mother's grip tightened around her wrist. Sophia, breathe. Think. They need me. Panic clawed at Sophia's throat. I need to find them. Look at the TV, Serenity said firmly. Look, the television now showed aerial footage of highways leading out of Los Angeles. Gridlock unlike anything Sophia had ever seen. Thousands of vehicles at a standstill, some abandoned as people continued on foot. the military conspicuously absent from every possible scene, advising against attempting to enter the Los Angeles metro area. Radiation concerns as far as 40 miles from the blast sites. National Guard has been activated. Sophia's phone buzzed again with the same emergency alert. National emergency declared. Shelter in place. Await further instructions. I can't just sit here, Sophia hissed, tears finally breaking through her shock. Mom, I can't. Serenity pulled herself up straighter, summoning strength that shouldn't have been possible in her frail body. When she spoke, her voice cut through the cafe's panic with surprising authority. Listen to me, Sophia Ayala Williams. Your fear wants you to run, but running blind is how people get killed in disasters. She took Sophia's trembling hands in hers. Breathe first, think second, act third. You taught Claire that, remember? When she gets overwhelmed, the mention of her daughter's name sent fresh pain through Sophia's chest. But she forced herself to inhale deeply. Once, twice. Her mother's eyes held hers, anchoring her to the moment. Mark is smart, Serenity continued. He knows to get Claire somewhere safe. He knows you're here with me. You charging into a nuclear disaster zone helps no one. But what if? No what ifs yet. Facts first. What do we know? Despite herself, Sophia felt her analytical mind begin to engage. There were 2 explosions over Los Angeles. People were leaving the city, but the military does not seem to be reacting yet. There looked like a massive area of LA leveled by the explosion. Good. What else? Roads are jammed. The military will soon be blocking entry. There might be radiation. The reality of that word hit her anew, and she swallowed hard. Communications are overloaded, with everyone trying to check on their loved ones. The news cut to a press briefing where the perky smile of the blonde, blue-eyed, and comely presidential press secretary, incongruent to the chaos erupting, confirmed what everyone already knew. 2 nuclear devices had detonated over Los Angeles. Origin unknown. Casualty estimates pending. Military response underway. The potential for additional attacks could not be ruled out. And does everyone like my new lip gloss? The press secretary asked. I can't just wait here, Sophia whispered. I can't. Serenity studied her daughter's face. No, you can't. But you need a plan, not panic, for the next hour, as the world unraveled around them. Sophia and her mother remained at their table. The cafe transformed into an impromptu crisis center for the customers. The owner turned up the television volume, distributed free coffee, and allowed people to charge phones on every available outlet. Information trickled in. The blasts had occurred over downtown Los Angeles. Early estimates suggested the devices were relatively small by nuclear standards. Tactical nukes, like the RSM-56 Bulava, rather than strategic nuclear weapons, but devastating nonetheless. Sophia tried every communication method she could think of: calls, texts, emails, and social media messages. Most failed, but occasionally a text would go through, only to receive no response. She left voice messages that grew increasingly desperate. "I'm coming to find you. Wait for me. I love you both." Outside, the town of San Bernardino transformed. Police directed traffic at intersections. Lines formed at gas stations. The grocery store across the street was mobbed. People hugged strangers or argued violently about what to do next. And through it all, Serenity remained calm, her presence a counterweight to the mounting hysteria. She helped Sophia gather information, separating facts from rumors, while conserving her limited energy. "The radiation reports are mixed," Sophia noted, scanning emergency updates on her tablet. "Some areas might be relatively safe, especially with proper precautions. And Mark knows this," Serenity reminded her. "He'll get Claire to safety if he can." If he can. The words hung between them, unaddressed. By mid-afternoon, Sophia had made her decision. She would return to Los Angeles, not in blind panic, but with purpose and preparation. Her mother didn't try to dissuade her. She recognized the determination in her daughter's eyes. "I'll be back for you," Sophia promised as she prepared to leave. "Once I find them, we'll all come back here." Serenity smiled sadly. "I know you will." She pressed something into Sophia's hand, a small silver locket containing a family photo. For luck, the drive that should have taken over an hour stretched before Sophia like an impossible gauntlet. Roads would be clogged. Gas might be scarce. And at the end waited either reunion or devastation. "I love you, Mom," she whispered, embracing Serenity carefully, conscious of her fragility. "Find them," Serenity replied simply. "Be smart. Be safe." As Sophia's car pulled away from the morning brew, Serenity Williams watched from the window. Sophia touched her fingers to the glass in silent farewell, praying that her mother, Serenity, and her daughter, Claire, would forgive her for the choice she'd been forced to make today. Between the mother who was dying and the family who might already be gone. The afternoon shadows grew long as Sophia's car raced along the westbound interstate back to Los Angeles. The main highways heading east had quickly become impassable, choked with the vehicles of fleeing civilians. Radio reports described mass evacuations from areas surrounding Los Angeles, the declaration of martial law, and conflicting radiation warnings. Sophia had expected gridlock all the way, but the lack of any vehicle but hers heading west made the drive that more unsettling. The traffic thinned as she approached LA. The further she drove, the emptier the roads became. She was alone on the freeway. A surreal experience on roadways normally congested at all hours. The emptiness carried its own warning. She was driving toward something everyone else was fleeing. Sophia's GPS had stopped working hours ago, but she didn't need it. 15 years in Los Angeles had etched these routes into her memory. Exit here, turn there, the familiar path home. As she crested the final hill that should have revealed their neighborhood, her headlights illuminated a transformed landscape. Where apartment buildings and shopping centers should have stood, there was absence, rubble, small fires, and just nothing. A perfect circle of annihilation. She pulled to the side of the road, stepping out into air that smelled wrong, like sulfur and ash and things that had no name. The evening was eerily quiet. No sirens, no voices, no wildlife, just the soft tick of her cooling engine and the blood rushing in her ears. Beyond the destruction's edge, buildings remained mostly intact, untouched save for their destroyed windows, as if a giant cookie cutter had stamped down from above, removing only what lay within its circumference. Their apartment had been 3 blocks inside what was now emptiness. Sophia walked forward in a daze, approaching the edge of obliteration. Something crunched beneath her shoes, glass fused with asphalt, transformed by unimaginable heat. The boundary between existence and nothingness was shockingly abrupt. Mark wouldn't have had time to leave home and then driven to Claire's school, she reasoned desperately. He could have left early for his regular gym workout and could have driven straight to her. Her school must be outside this circle. They could still be alive. They must be. The distant growl of engines broke the silence. Headlights swept the devastation as a convoy of military vehicles rumbled into view. Camp Pendleton Marines, in full hazmat gear, disembarked, moving with half-practiced efficiency. One spotted her and approached, face obscured behind a protective mask. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area. You need to evacuate immediately." The faceless Marine barked. "My family," Sophia's voice cracked. "My husband and daughter. They lived here." The soldier's posture remained tense and rigid, clearly on edge. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There were no survivors within the blast radius. Radiation levels here are dangerous. We need to leave now." "But they might not have been home," she insisted. "My daughter's school. It must be outside the blast radius. My husband might have—" "Ma'am?" The soldier cut her off, not unkindly. "Secondary evacuation sites have been established for survivors. Check there. But you can't stay here. It isn't safe." As if to emphasize his point, a radiation detector at his belt emitted a persistent clicking that grew faster as they stood talking. "Where?" she demanded. "Where are these evacuation sites?" Before he could answer, Another Marine approached rapidly. "Sir, we've got missile incoming." "What?" said the first Marine. "Bogey confirmed. ETA 2 minutes." The first Marine's demeanor changed instantly. "Everyone back to your vehicles. Move, move, move." Around them, the unit scrambled into motion, abandoning whatever task had brought them to ground zero. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, fear rising anew in her chest. The Marine gripped her arm. "Another missile, headed right for us. We need to go, now." "Another?" The words died in her throat as understanding dawned. This wasn't over. "Now," the soldier urged. "Get in your car and drive east as fast as you can. Don't stop until you're at least 50 miles out." Sophia stumbled back toward her vehicle, moving on autopilot. As she reached for the door handle, some instinct made her look up. There, cutting across the darkening evening sky, was a thin, white line, like a shooting star, moving in slow motion. But unlike a shooting star, it wasn't arcing away. It was descending, the third, markedly larger missile coming to finish what the first two had started. Sophia stood frozen, again at a loss for words, with her hand still extended toward her car door. The Marine shouted something at her, but his words were lost in the strange silence that had enveloped her consciousness. She watched the white line grow brighter and tracked its inevitable path toward the ruined city, toward her. In that moment, Sophia understood with perfect clarity what her mother had tried to teach her that morning. Some forces were beyond human control. Some decisions led only to different versions of the same ending. She thought of Mark and Claire. Whether they had perished already, or had they survived only to face this missile. She thought of her mother, alone in San Bernardino, watching the news and knowing her daughter would never return. Sophia's hand dropped from the car door. The approaching missile reflected in her eyes as she tilted her face skyward. There would be no scream, no lamentation, no running from what had already been decided. There was only the overwhelming weight of understanding. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning. The hunt never ends. "You thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you?" the note read. The man had shivered when he had read those ominous words, as perspiration began to drip down from his temple, the salty liquid seeping into his eyes and temporarily blinding him. "This is the end," the man had said to himself in an agitated, trembling whisper, as he looked down at the sheet of notepaper which had been left on his office desk. He glanced around at the other employees to see if anyone was looking his way, giving him some indication on who had left the message. But all of them were engaged in their own little world of toting up the facts and figures which were constantly coming through on their computer terminals. What had caused this man to turn deathly white and feel so nauseous? How had those 9 little words on the page that had now turned his world completely upside down come to cause him so much anguish and despair? That unhappy event had happened a week before. So let us now find out what had caused this man, Henry Miller, to end up in this now distressing location where he now found himself. At this moment, he was looking between the slats of a Venetian blind, observing the street outside, and trying as best as he could to remain unseen from the road in front of the building, where he now cringed, frightened out of his wits. How had it come to this? He thought. Last week, he didn't have a care in the world. All was going well at work. And then came that note, and he found himself involved in something that had instantly changed his life, and now he was on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder, and at this moment hiding in this abandoned building, a structure that had a large sign outside stating that it was condemned and would shortly be torn down. So, how long could he remain here before he had to find another place of sanctuary? The year is 1948. The war is over. After 6 years of bloodshed and butchery by a psychopath and his evil, willing collaborators, during which an estimated 80 to 100 million people had died or been murdered. The Nuremberg trials had finished, and many, many hundreds of German Nazi war criminals had found justice on the end of a rope for crimes against humanity. Then, there were some who had decided that a cyanide pill was a much quicker way to escape the noose of retribution. Others, seeing that the end was near, had made their getaway before the Russians entered Berlin and tortured them, finding their way to South America, where many of them lived for a while, trying to evade the men from the Simon Wiesenthal organization, people dedicated to finding every last Nazi and bringing them to justice, headed by their leader, a man known as the Nazi Hunter, who was a Holocaust survivor. Even though many years have passed, the hunt still goes on, still finding those vile and depraved monsters, a subspecies of the human race. Although some are well into their dotage, justice is still being served. A particular case in point is the case of Adolf Eichmann, who, along with Heinrich Himmler, was the architect of the final solution, where 6 million Jews were sent to the death camps, only to be gassed, their bodies cremated, and the remains crushed. Eichmann was finally located in Argentina in 1961, thinking that after 16 years, he was safe. But justice caught up with him, and he met the Grim Reaper on the end of a rope a year later. But returning to Henry Miller, a man who had changed his name from Henrik Mengele and who had managed to escape from his home in Germany to live in Spain, a neutral country, during the war, just after the conflict had begun. The surname he was born with, Mengele, was the same name as the man who was once revered by the Nazi Party for his inhumane and horrific experiments. on unwilling participants. The infamous Dr. Joseph Mengele, a man given the name of the Angel of Death, a man, if indeed he could even be called that, who performed appalling and unspeakable experimentation on live inmates of the concentration camp at Auschwitz. Most of those subjects dying a lingering, painful, and agonizing death, all in the cause of making the so-called German master race into a nation of blue-eyed, blonde, Aryan supermen. But what had caused Henry to be reduced to his present situation? It was all due to that one barge letter that he had found on his desk just over a week before, which caused him a great deal of torment. He had read the words, his trembling hands trying to stop the shaking that was coursing through his body. The words that read, "You thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you?" For many years, he had feared that maybe someone, somewhere, at some time, might find out about his namesake and make his life a living hell, maybe even murder him, with the idea that he was in some way engaged in the work carried out by that misguided and psychotic mass murderer, and had, somehow, missed out on receiving the same fate that had befallen the other members of the Nazi death squads. But he had been so careful, and had never told anyone of his former name, or his possible relationship to the Angel of Death at Auschwitz. So, how could someone have found out where he lived or worked? The only way out that he could think of was to go on the run, getting well away from anyone he had worked with and from where he had lived. He had no plan, just a crazed idea that he must stay out of sight in this empty building before he made his next move. All sorts of wild ideas coursing through his brain. Thoughts that he had never even dreamt about, up until now, came into his mind. It was a few weeks later in the office where Henry had formerly been employed, a place from which he had mysteriously disappeared some time previously, without explanation. One of the other employees who had worked with him had just read an article in the newspaper that had shocked him. It mentioned that his former workmate had been found dead in an abandoned building, having seemingly committed suicide by ingesting a cyanide pill. As tears welled up in his eyes, he murmured words that he found extremely difficult to say. "Henry, what happened? Why did you do it? Just as your friends here were organizing a surprise party for your birthday. You tried so hard to keep it a secret, and you thought that we wouldn't find out, didn't you? So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, Don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.